Coming up on the Social Grenade podcast, part 2 with Greg McCoy.
I mean, I know your family expected you to be a preacher.
Yeah.
When did you know that, like, I'm not going to be a preacher?
1987. My dad was that old school, real tough. But I remember coming a rope kid in my manager's office in 2015 telling me, he goes, I can't tell you how proud I am of what you've become as a man. And yeah, it was very touching to me.
I admire you from afar because, like, I'm like, I don't know how you go through all of that and then hold the balance of the economics of several dealerships at the same time.
For a long time, I didn't go to church for years. But I think a lot of that faith principle that you have, when I was 14, I was very young, and I prayed. God says you can have anything you want. So if you can have wealth, you can have it all. But he chose wisdom.
I took it so personally, I took them on and did them for free. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to call these for free and show you that this does work, because right. I have pride in what I do too. And if I could prove to him, he's not that he's wrong, but that this is right. This is and can work, then a challenge accepted by God. I do want to pivot a little bit to, I know we talked about, I know your family expected you to be a preacher.
Yeah.
And I think that you are a preacher. Like you just don't serve in a church. Because I think that, you live your life by the tenets that are, I don't know if holy is the right word, but godly, and giving back and us taking care of the people that are put in our path. And I think that that's really like what anybody who is in the spiritual realm, that's what they, should be doing. So when did you know that, like, I'm not going to be a preacher?
1987. I was, I had an epiphany. So I'd been in the car business 2 years. I was now doing F&I. I was walking, I can tell you exactly, I was walking through the hospital. My mom had some minor surgery, and my dad, they very, church going people, don't drink completely, don't drink, don't smoke cigars, don't do all the things I do. And they know I did it. But at that time, wasn't into that. In fact, my first job, the Moleys still call me Rev today. I was known as Rev. And, but I was walking through, and I remember very clearly my mom was having some minor surgery. I was with my dad, and I had while I was going to Bible school, I also worked with my dad as a teamster at Safeway Food Grocery Warehouse in Kansas City, Kansas. And anyway, we were walking through the hospital and to go up to see her, to visit her. And my dad, I looked at my dad, I said, you know what, Dad? I said, I'm going to make a career out of this car business. And he said, what? I said, I'm going to make a career out of the car business. And within 5 years, I'm going to be making $100,000 a year. Now, I understand my dad was a teamster for 41 years. At this point, probably 30-some years. And I'll never forget it. He probably never made more than, back in the day, big money. It was big money. It's like $14, $15 an hour, which, but he probably never made more than $30,000 a given year. And he was real frugal with his money. They were very good church-going people. I'll never forget it as long as I ever lived. He turned me around, spun me around, kind of almost backed me up against the wall nicely. But he just said, son, he goes, you need to stop thinking foolish. I need you to either go finish your Bible college and go pastor a church, or get back on the union job with me, so you can have a family and you have responsibility to a family that you need to provide for, and you get a job with benefits and a good income. Because this car business is a joke, and you and I both know it. Never forget it in my life. Now, listen, my dad loved me. He passed away about 6 years ago. Well, about 4 years ago. But anyway, at 90, he lived to 90. And honestly, my dad was that old school, real tough. But he finally, at the end, was always, he made me very proud. I can't believe what you've done with your life. I remember coming a rope kid in my manager's office in 2015 telling me, he goes, I can't tell you how proud I am of what you've become as a man. And it was very touching to me. But I knew then. And I had dedicated so at that point forward, I went ahead and said, that's my career. In 1989, by the way, I made $103,000 in 1989, which is huge money in 1989 as an F&I manager. And I didn't go back and rub up my dad's face. It wasn't, we had a great relationship. So it wasn't that kind of thing. He was saying that all out of care. Right. I could tell you, Robin, there were times in the business, and we all have it, that you might pivot. And you probably don't know this as in the car industry side, but in 2000 and 2001 era, there was a mass exodus of sales managers, general managers, and F&I managers that were leaving the car business and going into the mortgage brokerage business. And I'll never forget it as long as I have lived, because a bunch of my buddies did it. A bunch of them. I was in Kansas City working at a dealership as a general sales manager. And a bunch of my employees were rebelling. And they said, "Hey, Greg, you need to come over here. You can make $1 million a year." And some of those guys were making big money. I still think it's what happened to the mortgage industry. We put all the car guys in there, and the mortgage collapsed in 7-8. And I remember very clearly I got offered a big pay raise to go do that, and have a management role in that, and a mortgage broker company in Kansas City. And I said, no, I dedicated my life to a career of car business. I'm going to stay with this. And then we all know what happened 7-8 years later. It all collapsed. All these guys come running back to the car business or whatever they did. It didn't matter.
Right.
I had dedicated that. I knew if I shifted my focus away from it, or got chasing all the little trinkets, all the other things out there, that I wouldn't hone my craft. So I've always tried to hone my craft. As you know, I try to read 40, 50 books a year. I read every day. Every day I get up in the morning. I'm up early now, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I read a little bit of the New Testament or the Bible, and then I'm reading a book right now, 5 Obsessions of Elite Organizations. I've reread Traction. I've got books and books and books galore. And of course, I read them and fall on Audible. I'm like you. When I'm sitting at the beach with my wife, I take a book with me and read a book while I'm on the beach. That's what I do. Anyway, to answer your question, that was when I decided, and I dedicated, and I still dedicate my life to that. So
moving past that, 'cause we talked about the loss. And so this is, so here's the hard thing whenever you're an entrepreneur and you're in charge of not just your income, but really the financial health of several dealerships. And you're going through the loss of 2 sons, of your dad, of your mom, all basically at the time when you're building your second career. Like, how do you compartmentalize that shit and go, okay, how do you go, like, how do you just not be stuck in the mire? Because that's a lot of loss. All of those people, I mean, I know both your sons, I know the relationship you had with your mom and your dad. And I admire you from afar, because I'm like, I don't know how you go through all of that and then hold the balance of not just your economics, but the economics of several dealerships at the same time.
Well, for a long time, I didn't go to church for years. I just started going back actually a year ago. And I'm not going to say it's just all faith, but I think a lot of that faith principle that you have, somebody said something to me. I said, when I was 14, I was very young, and I prayed. Solomon asked for wisdom that he might have discernment on how to God says you can have anything you want. Solomon says you can have wealth, you can have it all, but he chose wisdom. And because he did, he got everything else. And I remember very young asking for wisdom. I was sharing with Scott Lehman a couple months ago. He goes, well, how do you know how to read financials and all this? I said, I prayed for that when I was a very young man. And I believe God gave me a different type of wisdom, because I'm a very motivational speaker, but I'm also understand all the numbers. As you know, I can dissect a financial statement and expense reports and all that to find out all the things I need. So it's kind of, I don't have one or the other. I have both, I think. And I've been I think a lot of that has to do with that prayer back then. Even when I was unfaithful in church, per se, he's always been faithful to keep true to that wisdom and didn't lose it. So what I would lean in on that, even though I wasn't actively practicing the church part of it, I would lean back on that and realize that, because it was very hard as you know, on Tammy and I, with the boys especially, and then because my parents are older. But I think what you do is you lean in. It's everything else I've done. I lean in instead of try to run away. Mm-hmm. And so when I lean in, I said I got to lean into family, because I got to make sure the kids are okay. That they had siblings, and Tammy's okay. Mm-hmm. So you had that responsibility. But then I leaned into the business too, and I said, I have a responsibility, and a moral responsibility to these people who have entrusted me. And I've always said this before. Tammy accuses me of being better with my dealer's money than I am with my own, because I'll go out and me. I'm crazy about buying everybody all the drinks at the bar or all the dinners or whatever. I don't care about monetary things necessarily for myself, but when I look at that, so I leaned into that, and I think part of it has to do with faith. I had a mom who every day told me what a great son I was, even though I wasn't always necessarily a great son, what a great human being I was. And those positive interactions, you need that positive input yourself. That's why I always say today's the day. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. I love the car business. You have to have that ability to say that, you know what, it's okay. It's even in church, it's fascinating. You can look in the mirror and say, you know what, God loves me. Doesn't matter if anybody else does. God loves me. And when you start, so I try to feed positives. I start every one of my meetings, every meeting now, Robin, starts with, what's your positive for the week? Every single meeting I have with dealers on Zoom calls, that's the first thing. If you talk to any of them, it's right on my agendas. You have to have a positive. It can be personal, business, or both, but you have to have a positive because there's enough negatives out there. And when we start just feeding the negatives, and I think that's what sustained me through those times, was I reflected back on all those, especially with the boys and my mom and dad, all the good times I have. Does that mean I wasn't sad? Of course I still have my tough days.
Yeah.
But you lean back and then you look and you see the good that you hopefully that you've been able to instill in people. It's not just, that's why I try to tell people, it's not.
The I'm a Car Chick podcast is a proud sponsor of the Social Grenade podcast. Listen now.
Bob Hadley told me one time, chase your goals, money will follow. Chase your goals. Don't chase the money.
Right.
Chase the right things. The money will follow along. And so I think that's what sustained me, as I realized there were people who still needed me to do the job every day, and I couldn't let that go, or I would not be doing the boys justice or my mom and dad justice. So that's how I got to it.
Yeah. And I know that people don't ask you that question a lot, but it's like to sit back and go, how do we just keep pouring back into other people whenever there's a big hole in your bucket leaking out? And you're like, and I'll tell you, from experience, nobody knows how to come back and plug your hole. Like you have to plug it yourself. Like
That's
there's
right.
nobody like, and people are well-meaning, and they're like, if you need anything, let me know. Well, number one, we don't know what we need, and second of all, when we do know what we need, we don't know how to ask for it. We don't know how to reach out to somebody and go, I just really need, somebody to come listen to me cry in the shower. You know what I'm saying, or whatever it is. And so it's one of those things that I think that from the outside. I know people can probably look and go, man, he didn't grieve right, or he didn't, he's still doing this. You know what I'm saying? Like they have their own judgment about that. I know because I went through the same thing.
Yeah,
So it's
of course.
people going, how's she just able to function and do whatever? And it's like, I got other people that are still relying on me too. I got people that are relying on me to show them how to grieve, to show them how to get on the other side of this. Like my job's not done. Like it's not about me, it's about everybody else that's taking the cue. So like whenever it was Josh, it was your job to, show the other boys, like, this is how we get on the other side of this. This is how we still respect their memory and get on the other side of this.
Right.
And we still be, men at the end of the day. So that is not something that anybody should have to go through. But if so, then like literally find your core and your center that you can lean on. And sometimes it's only you. Sometimes it's not, your spouse isn't strong enough to lean on. You just have to be like the one and be the one that brings that to the table. And so in the middle of all of this fun stuff going on in your life, you didn't just make a move out of automotive. You made a move first to Kansas City, which was kind of home, and then just straight to freaking Florida so that we could all be so pissed off. But to be fair, I've been a recipient of the gift of getting to come and stay down there as well. So I know that that's your guys' happy place. And that is being warm is like one of the most important things to me. I hate being cold ever. Matter of fact, when a client will go, well, we want you to come up and onboard our store. And I'm like, where are you at? And they're like, we're in Vermont. I'm like, no, that's not happening. I'm not coming there in January. I will see you in June.
That's right.
So you're lucky. I mean, Michigan sucks and you don't have to go there anymore. But now the fact that you get to go to Arizona, so it's nice and toasty. So getting to dictate like the last, what have we been? Has it been 10 years? No, how many years have you been?
2006. Yeah, well, so I started this company in 2016 while I was still at the general manager.
Right.
But I bailed out at Roper full. And if you recall that last year I was at Roper, I was very seldom at the store. I was managing that remotely, kind of like what I'm doing in Arizona right now.
Right.
But then 2018 is when I left. But the company was founded in 2016. I had a good friend named Robin Wilson help me get my my LLC, which is now switched down to Florida. It's a different LLC, but neither here nor there. But yeah, it's been 10 years doing this.
So, any advice for anybody who's looking at, like, you know what, I think I've got something to add and I want to move into this arena. Like, what advice would you give them? Like, I mean, I think about Kim Baker, like Kim Baker goes, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. And I'm like, call Greg McCoy. Like he's already made every mistake probably that could be made. And he's already made several successes that he knows how to duplicate now. So call him, because I guarantee you he's maxed out on clients right now. He's not going to, he's not going to hold him close to his chest and go, oh, figure it out yourself. He's going to do the thing. And so, I think about those connections and the things like, so what advice would you give?
Well, I would say this. I would advise people, especially that are even fairly new into management, or I don't know who all is going to be watching this or who is watching this right now, but I would talk about this started for me. They said, how did you build this? I said, I started building this back in 2000, maybe 1999, when I started networking with dealers around the country. 20 group meetings, gravitational marketing meetings. I went to every meeting. And I didn't just sit there and listen. I asked and engaged with people who were smarter and better than me, or who anybody I could ask a question of. And I started networking myself out. That's why we tease about me never networking in our company. I've never had to. It's defined by success, number one. So I've had a successful track record. But and there's a lot of people that have successful track records, but nobody knows you've had that successful track record. Right. Or because you've never gone out because you've been afraid to go out and expose yourself to scrutiny, or maybe embarrassment from peers. Well, I've never been that way. So I would say it really began, 30 years ago, of me investing that time and knowing that the end game that I wanted to do something along this line down the road. I didn't want to own a car dealership. Never did. I don't want to own car dealerships. I respect car dealers, but I don't want to own a car dealership. I love what I do. And I love the freedom that I can come and go as a general manager. That's what I did. I was kind of, I only worked for 5 people in those 30 plus years. But in those stores, but it was all about that. So if I was going to tell anybody to do something right now, one is get yourself out there early and think down the road. You should not be trying to plan, quit your job and say, well, I think I might go do some consulting. That's not how this happened. Mm-hmm. Not even close how this happened. And so what you have to do is first be forward thinking enough that you should have a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan. And every step, one of the things, Robin, I know you believe, like I believe, that what are you doing today towards the 1-year plan, which is geared for the 3-year plan. And plans do adjust and change. I'm not trying to say they don't, but that's where it all gets out of whack, is a lot of people don't start there. They just think that, oh, you just quit one day and you started this. Mm-hmm. No, it was years and years of networking and putting people together and having a conversation. If I have people that are getting ready to make this type of transition into this, there is a wealth of opportunity in every business sector of people needing help. And I can tell you, in the automotive sector, there's a lot of people that need help and want help. I read this past week, there was 25 years ago, there's 40,000 individually owned or owners of dealerships, both franchise and independent. Today, there's 8,000 because there's so many big groups buying.
Yeah, doubling them up. Yeah,
doubling them up. So they have multiple. It's not that they've all closed. They bought multiple locations. You got Hathaway Group, Hendrickson Group, Berkshire Hathaway. You've got all those groups out there just buying Lithia. All those guys buying up big organizations, and so one of the things that I also do is I try to understand how they're doing business. That's why the whole deal about inventory turns and acquisitions, because one of the things that people are complaining about right now is, well, they're all staying in the auction lane and buy, pay too much money for cars. Well, how are they doing that and turning a profit for because they answer to stockholders and board of directors. Well, so I learned into that velocity sales approach, and I understand how they're doing it. And that's why they're buying the market. But anyway, I won't get on that topic. Here's what I'm saying is, if you want to get into this business, you need to fill a niche, and you need to figure out what that niche is. You and I both know we've got friends, Robert, that have gone out on their own, and they'll try one thing, and then they'll go over and dabble in something else, and then dabble in something. then dabble in something else. And all of a sudden they've thinned out what their area of expertise is. So my advice to anybody is my area of expertise is people, process, and product. I go in dealerships to help people process the product. Now I can do it in a variety of areas because I know fixed ops, service, and parts as well as I know anything else, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that just as well as I do sales, accounting. So I stayed inside my wheelhouse. I don't know social media, so I'm not going to go out and try to sell social media. I'm not going to be a social media expert. What I do is I say, I got dealerships that need social media help. Absolutely. Let me get the best with you. Let me get you in touch with Robin Wilson. And I said, if it's something else they need, if it's, I just introduced a real good dealer who's having some problems with service and parts. I connected him with Matt Donovan. Mm-hmm. And Matt's doing a little fractional work with them. And it's been nothing but great. I don't try to become something that I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Just to get dollars. And I think that's the other thing I would tell consultants. Find out where your wheelhouse is and really get in there. One of the big things that I do with most of my consulting work is one of the big things I found that the reason we were having problems last year with hiring so many people is because our managers weren't that good. And so what I found was that the dealers were going to 20 group meetings and training meetings, and the salespeople were going to training meetings, and nobody was working with the manager. And so my business primarily has been from the beginning, I tell dealers right up front, is I really work with your managers. And that's who I speak to. The key managers in the store is where I really work. Now, I still talk to the dealers occasionally, but the bulk of my conversations, my Zoom calls, my visits are with the managers in the stores. They're not with the dealer because they need that attention and growth. And I challenge them. That's like I told you. I had the manager that was trying to tell me he doesn't do his training on a regular schedule. You know very well I work with Echo. Just had a call with her before I got on here with you. She's growing into a general manager's position, and so that's always been my passion. And I would tell people that find that niche that works for you. Maybe it's an owner level, I don't know, but wherever it is, don't try to be everything for everybody. Just realize if it's not your deal, don't do it.
It's funny because 2019. Before the world fell apart, I got to actually have a face-to-face conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk.
The I'm a Car Chick podcast is a proud sponsor of the Social Grenade podcast. Listen now.
And for those of you who don't know who he is, he's like the guy that always is seeing ahead on the social media moves that are happening. The predicted TikTok would be a big deal way before it was. And in 2019, I asked him, I'm like, I said, a lot of people want me to start doing digital as well as social. And I personally don't want to. I said, but I also don't want to be referring them out to somebody else, if that's something that we can do. Do you think I should do this or I should partner with somebody that does it? And he's like, immediately, he goes, literally stay in the lane that you're really good at. Stay there. There's other people to fill those services. Never take on a business partner ever because your goals are never aligned. It's going to be friction every time. And he's like, let somebody else serve that quadrant right there. Just be the best person there is in the realm that you're in. And I'm like, okay. And I never worried about it again. I never one time ever picked it up again. I tell you right now, if you put a gun to my head right now and asked me to place a Google ad, I could not do it. I just couldn't do it. I don't know how. I wouldn't even know where to log in. And that's because the realm that I'm in, social moves so fast. Every different platform moves so fast that I have to keep my eye on this ball. And it's funny because I think about, when we talk about people wanting to get into consulting, one of the things that helped me, and if you remember me coming to you and negotiating with you and Mr. Frost and going, look, I think that I'm really good at this automotive thing now. I think I've got it dialed in and I want to go help other dealers. I propose that I give you 25% of my salary back and you guys give me 1 week where my butt doesn't have to be in this chair so that you can, all your social will still be covered. I promise you I won't schedule it around any commercial shoots, anything else, blah, blah, blah. I promise that I will do this thing right here. And you guys agreed to that. And then we worked that plan until we moved into a vendor relationship. And so I think for people who are looking to start doing this thing, pick up a fractional client and then negotiate 3 days off a month when you're not in the store. And you can go and actually sit in that dealership and one-on-one with them and do that thing and build it small like that. First of all, your wife will be happy because your risk tolerance with her may not be so great. And second of all, you'll start learning what this looks like and start building out your processes. When you're doing it for somebody else, you pay more attention to the processes that you're trying to implement than when you're just doing it for yourself, just kind of winging this thing and learning this thing. But when you're out there actually teaching it and implementing it, I think that you start documenting a lot more. This is how I did this thing. Here's the result that I got. Here's how I did this thing. And there's the result I got. So I think for the ones that just don't have the risk tolerance, they don't have, 2 years worth of income sitting in the bank waiting for them to, go make every mistake that they're going to make, that if they could start, and fractional is a big thing right now because really no dealership wants to pay the money that it's going to cost to get that person in-house. And if you're really good at the finance side of it, fractional CFOs are like gold. Like if you think about having that, you could do it in your spare time, and you could take on $2,500 a client to do their fractional CFO work for them, and you could take 10 clients at $2,500 a month, and you can do it when you're not at the dealership because that's just stuff that you're really, really good at. Why would you not do that thing right there without disrupting your gold mine that you have going?
Well, I'll throw into if you'll recall, and I do very well remember how you came to me with that idea, and Jeff and we talked about it, and I kind of followed that same pattern. If you recall, I started this company in 2016. I was still the general manager for another 2 years at Roper. My first client was Tim Whitehead in Enterprise, Alabama, Chrysler Dodge Jeep store, and I would travel down and see him every other month for a year before he sold the stores, and while I was still the general manager. So that's a very good sound advice, and I will tell you right now, one of my very dear friends that lives down here in Florida with me, who's my niece's grandfather, actually, but he was the CFO for Steve Oliver Sunflower Dodge, where I worked for 8 years in Kansas City. That I've got him doing fractional CFO work for 3 clients right now. So you are giving and he's 70-some years old. He's just doing it because he loves it, but he literally never goes to the dealership. But he's in 3 different dealerships right now. Because he's a CPA, and so what he was a CFO for we were big stores in Kansas City, and he has give really good sound advice. So what you're saying is exactly right. That's as good advice as I've ever heard given.
Well, and the thing is that you think about those dealers that they only own one store, right? So bringing on a CFO or even a CMO, like a chief marketing officer, right? They don't have the budget for that, but they still need the service. So how do you serve them? I mean, you think about like Van Tiles or the Hathaways or the Lithias or all of those, they've got CFOs and CMOs that run these entire organizations, but them paying them $200,000 is no big deal. Whereas this guy that has 3 independent stores, needs the help because he's really good at selling cars and really shitty at all the rest of it. Really shitty at marketing and really shitty at the financial side of it. Right. And so that tolerance right there, that's such a market for it. And that's one of the reasons why, and we're talking about like getting out of the things that, like when we jumped into BDC, we didn't mean to jump into BDC. We just did. And I know I sought advice during that time. You and I were whiteboarding the whole thing, trying to figure out like how this was going to work. But whenever we launched Social Grenade, alongside of SCP Agency, and we still had Epic BDC. I have mentors too, and so Alex Hermosi is one of them that I pay to go get his advice and go. But he's like, you cannot be great at 3 things. You cannot be great at 3 things. So pick the one that you love the least, and it doesn't even matter if it's a revenue generator. If you love it the least, and it is taking up more of your time, is like get rid of that thing. So selling Epic BDC was so that the thing that we are good at is social media. And we are terrific at it. And this was a distraction. And like people all the time be calling me about BDC stuff. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk about BDC. So I think about when people are like going, what's my niche, right? What is the thing? What would be my niche? And I always tell them this, gun to your head, all of the speakers called in and nobody showed up for this presentation that was going on. And they're going to yank you out of the office, out of the audience. And you have to talk for 30 minutes. What's your go-to? And once you know what that is, that you could do that at a moment's notice, then know that's where your niche is. That's what you're the most familiar with and the most comfortable with, and then go in that direction.
Yep, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. It's where your heart is.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you one little funny before we leave. And this is about Jerry Baker. And I think about all the times that Jerry Baker wanted a key machine, and we sit in those meetings, and Jerry Baker was the parts manager for Roper Kia, and he'd bring it up once a month. Here's my thing, blah blah blah. I want a key machine, and every time Greg would go, "Yeah, how many months until it pays itself off? What are you going to do the thing?" And like he would tell him no until Jerry got a compelling enough story to tell him how long it was going to take for him to pay that key machine off if he invested in making the key machine. And so Jerry ended up getting it, and he literally paid for itself way earlier than he thought it would. It turned out to be a good deal, but he had to prove that this was a thing, not just a want, right? So yesterday, Shasta was telling me, she's like, she always goes through the 7 brew coffee and pays whatever for her stupid coffees every morning. And it's just an expense that she doesn't need. And I don't get it, but it's not my business. She's a grown adult. And so she's like, you're going to be so proud of me. I went to Walmart and I bought this Nespresso machine that makes espresso, because espresso is what I like in my coffee. I just don't like regular coffee. I have to have espresso, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, and I said, how much was that? She goes, it wasn't bad. It was like $91. And then she goes, then she Jerry Bakered me. She goes, I figured it's going to take me this many days of how much money I used to spend at 7 Brew to pay off that coffee machine. And she goes, and I'll be in the plus after that. I'm like, oh, that's Jerry Baker math right there. It was hysterical. But she'd already done the math of how many coffees she needed to not buy at 7 Brew to have covered the cost of that Nespresso machine.
Well, I will tell you, I told the Jerry Baker story this week.
Did you?
Yes, I had, because I was saying, I said, he kept coming every week for that. And finally he put the plan together. And I said, he paid it off in there's going to be 13 months. He paid it off in 9 months. Had enough. I said, now I'm fully convinced that every car had 3 sets of keys.
Yes.
A used car that came in had probably 3 sets of keys. But he owned, the moral of that story was he owned it.
Right.
He owned it. And once he owned it, he was not going to fail at it. And it's a great story. I remember being so hard on him about it, but I love that story. So thanks for remembering.
It was so funny because every week it'd be like, here'd be Jerry bringing up his thing again. We're all like, not the key machine.
Yeah, that's true.
It was hysterical. Well, Greg, this has always been fun. I wish we could hang out every day because I always learn so much from you, and just getting to hang out with your old friends is something you should do all the time anyways.
Yeah, it's valuable. I got to tell you, this has been the best. It's been my highlight of the week. When people ask me what my positive is for the week, this is my positive for the week, Robin. Thank you for making it.
I love it. And we do that too. We do our L10 meetings, and it's always good news business, good news personal. And so one of my employees go, I don't have anything. I'm like, then get out of the room. You don't get to be part of this meeting. You have to be, you should have thought about this in advance. All right, guys. Thank you for being part of the Social Grenade podcast. I will link all of the way to get a hold of Greg that he won't answer you on down below in the show notes. But and I know he's probably backed up and has a waiting list for clients, but if you ever even just need advice, he's like the greatest to hop on a call with you and give you whatever he has. He gives it freely, and will 100% have a heart for the car dealer, the GMs, the managers, the sales managers, the ops managers, all of them. And he's my good friend. So I love that. So thank you. And you guys have a great week. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Robin. Love you too.